Hi everybody, it's 25th of March today. It's me day off from work. Thought I'd do a quick video for you on some of the items that I have that I really love. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit brief history on how I picked them up, the price, and possibly their worth to me, or possibly the worth on the market. First one is this one here. It's a lamp stand. Nothing too amazing when you look at it, but when you look at the details here, you find it's by Edison and Swan. So that's Thomas Edison and Joseph Swan. It's patent. It's very early, probably 1880s, and I picked this up about 5 years ago from Plymouth Flea Market. I'm sure many of you know about Edison and Swan. They almost came to blows. They were gonna sue each other, and instead of doing that, the expensive litigation, they got together and formed a partnership for lamps, lighting, light bulbs, that type of thing, very early. This has got an oak base, carved base. The patina on it is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. There is a little bit of ink on the base there. The patination of the whole thing. I picked that up for £5. I originally picked it up, I thought, you know what I can do with that? I can chop this off here, and then I can put a top on it, a flat top, and put a skull on it. Pretendy skull or real skull, you know, for Halloween, or an animal skull. It's one of the type of things that I love to do. And then I noticed the little inscription. Value of that, £100, £200. Should be in a museum, really, I think. The next item, I bought this online not too long ago. It's just a bit different. So these knives are Horseman sporting knives, and this one is just really large. A size that you don't often find. Unfortunately, it does not have a maker's mark. If it did have one of the top maker's marks, then it would be maybe £3,000 or £5,000. Without that mark, it's potentially up to £1,000. What you've got to remember is something's only worth what someone is willing to pay, and the markets do rise and fall, and that's fine. That's what keeps everybody on their toes. You've got this bit for the Horseman, that would clean the hoof. Corkscrew. Any knife that has a corkscrew has a little bit extra value, mainly because it has a different market. Locks there. One of the nice things about this is, which I didn't know when I bought it, it has this medical flame. So sporting knife, horseman's knife, farmer's knife, what have you, and this is like a lancet or a flame, very sharp, and that would have bled an abscess, opened up a vein for the farmer. Got these other little bits here, little picks and what have you, and also got a saw. Carbon steel, holds a nice edge and has a nice patination, a colour. You often hear us going about patination. One of my favourite things, I bought this at a local antique fair. We've got horsehair and this. Now, some of this is bone, some of it is not. Some of it is ivory. And it's just past the antique era, becoming antique. See the date? I'm just going to have a drink. Nice cup of coffee. And 1919. Can you see what it is? It's a hand. What happened at the end of 1919? Well, World War One ended, and with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, it's an olive branch. So you've got the hand holding out the olive branch. Holding out an olive branch is to show that you want an end of a disagreement. So the ending of the war. This would have been made by a prisoner of war. Possibly French, because of the skill and the design and the style and the fine work on the bits of ivory. Prisoners of wars often made things for the soldiers that were keeping them captive, and they would exchange them for cigarettes and drink and what have you. This item, again, Teignmouth Flea Market. 2 years ago, Mother's Day on the Sunday. So I went down on the Saturday, and there was a guy there, a bit like myself. He's a dealer. He's retired from work now, so he's a full-time dealer. He's got a fantastic eye, and I seen him talking to somebody, and he had this in his hand, and they didn't know what it was. I knew straight away, or I believed I did straight away. I walked away. Next day, Mothering Sunday, we went down there for something to eat, get some flowers for the wife, and it was on the guy's stand. I picked it up, and he says, nobody knows what it is. I says, all right. He says, it's interesting. He says, do you know? I says, well, not really, no. I says, how much is it? I says, just nice. He says, £5. Took it off him, £5. And then I said to him, when I bought it and I had it in my bag, I says, I think it's a Scholar's Rock, Chinese Scholar's Rock. Yeah. The next week I went down, and he was talking to this other guy, and he pointed over to me. He says, that's him there. He's the one that took it. He says, I didn't want to sell it. Insinuating that the guy had left it on the table by an accident, and they wanted it back. I didn't let down anymore. Obviously I've still got it. It's one of my prides and joys. Scholar's Rock. So from 16th, 17th, 18th century, you had these Chinese scholars, and one of their jobs were to sit in a small confined area, often, not always, and write scrolls, large scrolls, scroll after scroll after scroll. You've probably all seen them in Chinese calligraphy, and these rocks were often a focus of meditation. And some of the beautiful wood ones, they let the scholars remember that outside of their chores, of their scroll writing, what have you, that there was a peaceful life and a beautiful life in nature. Okay, that's a Scholar's Rock. Some are highly collectible. And I've got this was maybe 50 pence or £1. Pottery, possibly terracotta, and it's a folk art style. It's very fun. Piggy bank in the form of a pig. Piggy banks now, they call them piggy banks, and they often just can be made of anything, any style, any design. But I love the orange bits here as well, and it's in really good condition. You can see it has had a bit there that chipped off, but somebody thought enough of it to fix that, and it's just very naive, and I absolutely love it. Someone's just dab with a paintbrush, slip that in. It has got a terracotta slight look to it, so that's one of my favourite fun pieces. Next bit is a piece that I've just bought. I probably paid too much for it actually. I only viewed it online, and it's a rare, or potentially very rare, Mr. Punch. and it's a table or a bar lighter. You've got the bit there where the copper or brass pipe would have went in with gas, and it would have had the cigar out here, which would have been lit at the bar with the gas. It's missing a bit here, unfortunately. It was stated in the auction lot that it was a bronze Irish leprechaun. So it's brass, not bronze. It's not a leprechaun, it's Mr. Punch. But it is highly patinated and it gives that bronze look. That's just years and years of people touching it, picking it up to light their cigarette or cigar rolly. I love the humpback, and it's on a nice, probably oak base. So when I seen it, I originally thought, wow. I seen it late. I didn't get any condition reports and I didn't get any more photographs. I thought it was a Mr. Punch car mascot, which looks very similar, especially this top bit here. The base is often different. Like I say, I probably paid too much for it. Hammer price was 160, so I paid a bit more on top of that. We've got this, which I may have showed you before in a video. It has got the label on the bottom. I've got it written down. It's a very rare Indian ivory carving from a place in Kerala that's very hard to pronounce. Excellent condition, very fine, circa 1900. Very, very hard to find in such condition. And it's a religious piece. You've got what looks like a monk with his flowers, and he's got what's probably the Bible, holding a child. It's possibly a christening, that type of thing. And it's on a horn pedestal or base. It's actually got the price that it originally would have been, but I don't want to pull this over and damage that. The price it was is immaterial now, but when you look at the little beads there, I'm hoping you can see them. Each little individual bead hand carved, and the toes. So here's a tip for you guys: if you're buying bronzes or ivory, one of the things to look for is the fingers and toes. It's highly important. The later ones, the ones not as good, even the early ones that are not as good, the fingers and toes are not as well defined, as well carved. And on this little child, you can see here, these are less than 1 millimeter width on these fingers, but they're well defined. And when you look at them under a loop, you can see the detail, and even the hair here, the little curls. It's very, very well defined, sharp, and it's very important. It gives you a more valuable piece. This piece has a lovely story behind it. Teignmouth market again a few years ago. Look at the light coming through. That's just from a little beam of light. When you put a candle behind it or a light, it's amazing. So there's a guy down there, Aaron, and he makes things with wood. Got him got me a table and what have you, and put some legs on it and that. He got this from his girlfriend. She's an artist. It's a one-off piece, and she made it for him for a birthday, one of his big birthdays. I think, if I remember rightly, although it's 4 or 5 years ago probably now, a 21st birthday. I can't really remember. It's so heavy. It's 12 pounds of lead crystal from a real human cast, skull cast. You can see there a little, it looks like a little stamp of lead. Look at the cracks on the cranium. Previous to this, a few years before, I had bought some antlers from another local antique place. The antlers, the shields were off them, there was the screws were off, the horns and the antler bits were off the skull part itself. I got the lot very, very cheap. I think we had a price of £45 if I remember rightly, and there was 5 that I could put together. I've kept a couple. I've just given one to my grandson for his 10th birthday, and I've sold about £600 or £700 worth. Like I say, I've still got a couple. I seen this, and immediately I thought, I'll do a swap. He had a price on it, and it was about £100. And yeah, I thought, yeah, it's well worth it, but I'll just ask about the swap. And I showed him a photo, and he says, yeah, I'll be interested in that. Like, he absolutely fell in love with this large pair of African antlers, sable, S-A-B-L-E, a large antelope from the African plains. I says, I'll bring them down tomorrow. Keep the skull. He says, yeah, I'll keep it. We passed it over, and he gave us all the information on the artist, his ex-girlfriend. And I absolutely fell in love with this. You can see these are where the little bubbles. When you put a light behind it, oh, it's amazing. Got a little light here. So I put my torch behind it, my torch on my phone. So the value from that, like I said before, it's something that someone wants to pay. See how it just lights it up, puts it into another dimension, doesn't it? Put that on windowsill. So yeah, it is something I would sell. I have no real attachment to everything. I would sell pretty much everything I've got. The minimum I would ever take for that would be £1,000. It's unique. £12 of lead crystal must cost hundreds of pounds, and it's by an artist. Can't find the paperwork at the moment, but I could find off of Aaron. And it's a beautiful piece. Skulls are so in vogue at the moment. People absolutely love them, going crazy for them. Skulls made out of candles, made out of wood, carvings, snooker balls. There's some skilled people out there. 2 quick more items, guys. 2 African carvings, both different. This one has a gorgeous, warm, tactile look and feel. Patina is amazing. It looks to be a bit like a fertility piece, but it's a guy, and it looks like he's had something chopped off. When you look at the back, you can see a couple of dangly bits. He's possibly had something chopped off at the front. That possibly might have something standing up. But that's been on my shelf for years. It's one of my favourite things ever. It cost us £10 about 10 years ago. He wouldn't come down on price, not even a penny. But I thought, yeah, I've got to have that. This other piece is what you would class as ivory, but it's a tusk or a tooth rather. They often come under the same category. From a hippo tusk or tooth. Well carved, but also quite naive. An African fellow sitting on his basket, and if you look at the detail on the basket with his large pipe, watching the world go by with his beautiful hat and headdress on. Even the back, you've got a few carvings there, a few scratchings. Now, if you look at the fingers on this one and the toes, as I was mentioning before, if you remember, guys, they're stubby. They're not done correctly. That's because it's a completely different type of thing. in its own field, in its own area. Again, highly sought after, highly collectible. I can't remember at the moment where I bought it or how much I bought it from. Would have been the local flea market, I guess.